Tonight's story is called Mile 11, The Road That Answers, written by Dead Air. There is a road that does not appear on any map. Online, people call it different things. The Devil's Turnaround, the 11th Mile, the Road That Answers, but the stories agree on the shape of it. 11 unmarked miles, somewhere off an old highway. Drive it right, and it's supposed to grant you something you want badly enough. Drive it wrong, and you don't come back the same. Nobody agrees on much more than that, which is exactly the kind of story that spreads. The one detail that shows up in every single account, though, is this: the road never lies. It doesn't trick people. It doesn't need to. It only ever asks questions, and every vision it shows is true. People who've driven it and lived always say the same unsettling thing afterward, that the road didn't take anything from them that they hadn't already, quietly decided they were willing to give. Mia pitched it like a girl's trip. "Okay, hear me out," she said, sliding her laptop across Riley's kitchen counter like she was closing a business deal. Haunted road, real rules, real videos, real people who swear it's not fake. We drive it, we film it. We have the best story any of us have ever told at a party for the rest of our lives. Riley was already leaning in before Mia finished the sentence. Riley leaned into everything. New coffee shops, new astrology apps, new conspiracy theories she'd defend for exactly 1 week before moving on to the next one. She ran a small channel that had maybe 1,100 subscribers and a wildly disproportionate amount of enthusiasm. Wait, is this the one with the cold thing? I've seen clips of this. Okay, we are absolutely doing this. I'm already thinking about thumbnails. There's rules though, Mia said, tapping the screen. Under 30 miles an hour the whole time. Windows up, no radio, no music, no phones. You don't get out of the car until all 11 miles are done. Also, apparently, you're supposed to keep a full tank, which, obviously, Riley repeated, already typing something into her notes app. Jade hadn't said anything yet. Jade rarely said anything right away. It was a habit from 3 years of night shifts in the ER, where you learn that the first thing out of your mouth should never be the first thing you thought. She worked 12-hour shifts stitching up strangers and had absolutely no patience left over for nonsense by the time she clocked out. And everyone who loved her knew this about her, and mostly loved her more for it. You want to drive an unmarked road at night with no phones and no way to call for help? Jade said, because the internet said it's spooky. I want us to do something fun, Mia said, and smiled the smile she'd been practicing in mirrors for the better part of a year. Easy, a little goofy, nothing behind it you could point to. It's been kind of a heavy year. I want one night that isn't heavy. That landed exactly the way she knew it would. Jade's whole face softened half an inch, the way it always did when Mia mentioned the heaviness directly, because Jade had spent 12 months tiptoeing around the subject of Zach like it might detonate. And any time Mia brought it up herself, unprompted, Jade treated it like a small miracle. She had no idea it was a lever. Mia had gotten very good this past year at knowing exactly which levers moved which people. Fine, Jade said. But I'm driving, I'm bringing a real flashlight, and if anything actually weird happens, we turn around. Deal, Mia said, and meant maybe 40% of it. Riley whooped. Mia laughed along, bright and easy. And nobody at that counter could have told you that underneath the laugh she was doing math. mileage, gas stations, the exact stretch of highway she'd already scouted twice by herself in daylight, telling both of them she'd just gone for a drive to clear her head. She had, technically. She just hadn't mentioned what she'd found at the end of it. Nobody talked much about Zach that first hour in the car, which was its own kind of performance. Riley kept the energy up with a true crime podcast fact she'd been saving for the right moment. Something about a woman in Ohio who'd faked her own death using a dentist's records. Jade drove with both hands on the wheel, and the dashboard clock glowing 11:47, and every few minutes she'd glance at Mia in the passenger seat like she was checking a patient's vitals without meaning to. Mia noticed. Mia noticed everything about how her friends looked at her these days. The careful gentleness, the way conversations detoured around certain words like cars going around a pothole. She'd built an entire personality this past year around making that gentleness unnecessary. Funny Mia. Fine Mia. Mia, who'd found a spooky internet challenge and wanted to turn it into content. Underneath it, in a place she didn't let either of them see, she had spent 381 nights doing math that had nothing to do with gas mileage. The turn-off appeared exactly where she remembered it, even though she'd told Jade she was following directions from a forum post. There was no sign, just a gap in the tree line that didn't show up on the GPS, which promptly lost signal the second Jade eased the car onto it. "Called it," Riley said, delighted, holding her dead phone up like a trophy. Jade's jaw tightened. "That's not... Phones losing signal in the woods isn't exactly a paranormal event, Rye." "Sure, keep telling yourself that, Nurse Jade." "I will, actually. Thank you." Mia smiled out the window and said nothing because the temperature had already started to drop, and she recognized it before either of them did. Mile 1. The cold came on fast enough that their breath fogged the glass. Riley whooped again, cranking her window down out of instinct before Jade barked at her to put it back up. "The rules, Riley. We talked about the rules." And Riley did, laughing, unbothered, filming her own shivering hands for the video she was already editing in her head. Mia reached over and turned up the heater without being asked. Her hand didn't shake. She'd had a year of practice keeping it steady. She didn't say that the night Zach died, the temperature had dropped 11 degrees in under an hour. A freak cold front the weather reports mentioned almost as an afterthought, buried under the real headline. She didn't say she'd stood outside a hospital in a thin jacket, too numb to notice the cold at the time, and that her body had apparently decided to remember it, for her, ever since. She just laughed when Riley made a joke about the AC being possessed, and the laugh came out completely convincingly, because at this point, it always did. Mile 2. The radio, already off, dissolved into a hiss of static that hadn't been there a second before. Then the forest went silent in a way none of them could film or explain. No wind, no insects, nothing. "Okay, that's new," Jade said quietly. "All business now," the ER voice. Riley had gone very still in the back seat, phone forgotten in her lap. Mia sat with her hands folded and let the silence sit on her chest exactly the way it had the night the call dropped. She had been on the phone with Zach when it happened. She had never told either of them that. 1 second his voice, mid-joke about a movie they were going to watch that weekend, and then nothing. Not static, Not a click, just this same enormous wall-to-wall silence, followed by 17 minutes of her own voice saying his name into a phone that had already stopped receiving anything back. "You're quiet," Jade said, glancing over. "I'm fine," Mia said, and smiled at her. And Jade, who could read a trauma patient's blood pressure off their face from across a room, believed her completely, because Mia had spent a year making sure she would. Mile 3. The tree line thickened, black and crooked, leaning in over the road like it was listening. Mia saw him first. Zach, standing at the edge of the headlights, whole and smiling the exact way he used to smile at her from across a crowded room. She didn't slam the brakes. Some instinct she couldn't have named told her not to. "Did either of you see that?" she asked, too casually. "See what?" Riley said, phone raised, filming the empty tree line with obvious disappointment that it was empty. Jade didn't answer right away. She was looking at the same stretch of trees, and something about the shape of it, the particular lean of the trunks toward the road, had caught on a memory she couldn't immediately place. A weather report she'd half read the week after Zach's crash, mentioning an unexplained temperature plunge along a stretch of highway lined with trees leaning the same way. She was almost sure she'd seen a photo of this exact tree line in that article. She just couldn't place why she remembered it at all. She filed it away instead of saying it out loud because saying it out loud felt, for reasons she couldn't have explained yet, dangerous. Mile 4. The whispering started so quietly that at first they all thought it was wind, except there hadn't been wind since mile 2. Jade heard her mother's voice call her name from somewhere off in the trees, warm and ordinary, like she was calling her in for dinner. Riley heard her little brother laughing, close, right outside the window, and stopped filming for the first time all night, her face gone pale and young in the dashboard light. Mia heard Zach. "You can still save me. Come find me. I'm waiting." And underneath it, so quiet only she could hear, 3 words in his actual voice. The last thing he'd really said to her, the last thing anyone had ever said to her that mattered. A sentence she had never once repeated out loud to another living person. Not Jade, not a therapist she'd refused to see. Nobody. "Guys," Riley said, in a very small voice that didn't match her at all, "I don't want to film anymore." Mia reached back and squeezed her hand and meant it. That part wasn't a performance, whatever else was, and said, "It's almost over," which was true in a way none of them understood yet. Mile 5. The forest dropped away entirely, and in its place stretched a black lake under a moon too large to be real. Riley made a small, awed sound despite herself. Jade's hands tightened on the wheel. Mia recognized it instantly. Not the lake itself, she'd never laid eyes on this exact place, but the feeling of it. The too large moon, the flat black water, the hush of somewhere outside of time. It was the lake from her and Zach's 3rd date. 2 hours out of the way because he'd read online it was one of the best places in the state to see the stars. They'd lain on the hood of his car for 4 hours. He'd told her, half joking, that if he ever died young, he wanted her to come back here and let him go properly. She had never done that. She had done the exact opposite of that, every single day for a year. Beneath the black water, only she saw his car. Submerged, headlights still burning underwater, Zach sitting inside with one hand pressed to the glass, looking straight at her like he needed her to reach in. Her fingers found the door handle before she'd decided to move them. "Hey," Jade said sharply, catching her wrist. "Hey, stay in the car." The vision vanished. Mia sat back, breathing hard, and for one unguarded second, the mask slipped completely. Jade saw something on her best friend's face that wasn't fear at all. It was recognition. It was grief so raw it looked almost like relief. "What did you see?" Jade asked very carefully. "Nothing," Mia said, and the mask came back up, but half a beat too late. Mile 6. The road began to shake, hard enough that Jade had to grip the wheel with both hands to keep them straight, and Mia's whole relationship with Zach played out behind her eyes in pieces. Their first date, the apartment, the ring he'd hidden badly in his sock drawer thinking she'd never find it. And then the argument. The one she'd never told either of her friends about in full. Her, tired and short with him on the phone, asking him to just come pick her up from her sister's instead of waiting until morning like he wanted. Him sighing, grabbing his keys, telling her he loved her right before he hung up. "What are you wishing for?" Jade asked quietly. Not a joke this time, a real question. "I don't know yet," Mia lied, and this time her voice cracked slightly on the last word, and she hated herself for it, because a year of practice should have made her better than this. Jade didn't push, but she was doing the math now, mile by mile, the way she diagnosed things without meaning to. The cold that matched the news report she'd half read a year ago and never mentioned to Mia because it felt intrusive. The tree line she now placed exactly, sickeningly. It was the road from the article. The lake Mia had mentioned exactly once, drunk 8 months ago, before changing the subject so fast Jade had let it go. This wasn't a haunted road testing a random traveler. This was Mia's whole life, playing itself back to her mile by mile. And Mia had known this entire time exactly what every single one of these miles was going to show her. Mile 7. Only Mia heard it. Zach's voice, but colder now, more deliberate. Would I want this? Silence. Would I forgive this? She didn't answer. Would I choose my life over theirs? For the first time all night, her hands actually shook on her knees. The road had been giving her a door at every single mile since the cold first hit them, and she had walked past every one of them smiling. Jade watched her not answer a question none of them could hear, and something in her chest went very still and very cold, colder than the air outside. Mile 8, the truth. It was Jade who found it, digging through Mia's backpack for a spare phone charger while Mia's eyes stayed fixed somewhere beyond the windshield. A torn page, folded small, shoved to the bottom like something meant to be forgotten. She unfolded it in the dark and had to angle it toward the dashboard light to read it. The road accepts one traveler. That was all it said. No explanation, no elaboration. Just 5 words in Mia's own handwriting, torn from a notebook and folded small enough to disappear at the bottom of a bag. Jade read it twice, then a third time, like the words might rearrange themselves into something less true. It didn't say what happened to a second traveler, or a third. It didn't have to. The not knowing sat in Jade's stomach like a stone. "Jade," Riley said from the back seat. "What is that?" Jade didn't answer her. She was looking at Mia and everything she'd been quietly assembling for the last 4 miles. The cold, the tree line, the lake, the argument Mia had just relived out loud without meaning to. The smiling, the fun, the "It's been a heavy year. I want one night that isn't heavy," folded together into a single shape she couldn't unsee. "You knew," Jade said. Her voice had gone very flat, the voice she used on patients who were about to hear something unsurvivable. "This whole night, the rules you gave us, the speed, the windows, the phones, that's not even the real rule, is it? There's a rule you didn't tell us. You've known since before we got in this car." Mia's hands were white-knuckled in her lap. She didn't deny it. "Say something," Jade said, and for the first time all night her composure actually broke. "Say something, Mia." "I needed you to come," Mia said quietly. "I couldn't do it alone. I tried to plan a version where I could, and I couldn't. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. But I need him back." Riley made a sound from the back seat that wasn't a word at all. "You brought us here to die," Jade said. Not a question this time. The locks dropped with a sound like a verdict. All 4 doors at once, an old mechanical thunk that had nothing to do with Jade's hands anywhere near the button. Riley threw herself against her door twice before she stopped trying. Nobody was getting out of the car until the road decided they could. This is the part of the story that's hardest to tell. Jade begged her to turn the car around. Riley was crying, pulling uselessly at door handles that would not move. Behind them, the road they'd entered on had already vanished, replaced by nothing but dark, stretching in every direction. Mia kept talking while Jade fought the wheel, explaining that she'd known from the beginning, that she'd torn the page out herself, that she'd spent a year performing fine so convincingly that the 2 people who knew her best in the world had climbed into a car with her without a single real warning. Jade pressed the brake until her leg shook, but the car continued forward at the same steady speed. She hadn't lied about wanting one night that wasn't heavy. She'd just left out that she intended to make it the heaviest night of all 3 of their lives. Jade said the line that ends most people's telling of this story: "We would have died for you, but you never even gave us the choice." Mile 9, no escape. Jade tried everything else a person can try with a car. She wrenched the wheel hard left, then right, and it held its line as if the wheel had stopped being connected to anything at all. She threw it into reverse, and it kept moving forward regardless, the needle steady at exactly 29 miles an hour. 1 mile under the only rule that had ever actually mattered. Riley grabbed the flashlight from the glove box and swung it into her window with both hands. The glass didn't crack. It bowed inward under the impact, held there a half-second too long, and then pushed itself back flat, unmarked, like water remembering its own shape. "It's not me," Jade said, to no one, to all of them, hands still locked on a wheel that no longer needed her. "I'm not doing this." "I know," Mia said quietly. "I'm sorry." Mile 10. The final alternative. For one long stretch, the road showed Mia something it hadn't shown her all night. Not a memory, not a wound, but a life. Herself a year from now, 2 years, 5, older, steadier. Laughing at something Jade said, somewhere sunlit. Riley beside her, filming nothing in particular, just because she liked to. No Zach in any of it. Just the 2 women beside her, alive. And a version of Mia who had grieved instead of bargained, and had come out the other side of it whole. It was the truest thing the road had shown her all night. It didn't ask her to imagine it. It simply proved, without cruelty, that she could survive. Is this life not enough? She looked at it for a long time, long enough that Jade, watching her face in the dashboard light, let herself hope. Then Mia closed her eyes and let it go. The sky cracked apart like glass. The stars blinked out one by one, and the road itself came loose from the ground, floating through something that wasn't quite darkness and wasn't quite anything else. Mia saw Jade and Riley standing outside the car, already gone. Ahead of her, Zach stood with his hand outstretched, waiting. The road asked her one final, wordless question. Is this your choice? Mia looked at Zach waiting ahead. Beside her, Jade dragged the steering wheel sideways with both hands, fighting desperately to turn them away. The car continued straight. Mia could still say no. She didn't reach for the wheel. There was nothing left to steer. She simply didn't take the life the road had just shown her, and that refusal was answer enough. The engine died at mile 11. Everything went black. No monsters, no shapes clawing through the dark, only a voice, calm and ancient, belonging to no gender at all. State your desire. I want Zach back, Mia whispered. Silence. Long enough that Riley's crying in the back seat was the only sound left in the world. Additional travelers accepted as payment. Riley stopped crying. Jade went completely still. Neither of them had known, not really, not with words that plain, until the voice itself said it out loud. And Mia realized in that same instant that she'd never actually let herself hear it, stated so simply either. She'd read the torn page 100 times. She had never once let it finish the sentence in her own head. Do you accept the exchange? Mia closed her eyes. The tears came freely now. Finally, a year late. Behind her, she heard Jade say her name once, quietly, like there was still time to answer differently. There wasn't. There hadn't been for months. Yes. Somewhere behind her, Jade and Riley screamed. Then the dark swallowed everything whole. Mia woke alone on an ordinary highway, morning sun on her face, birds singing as if nothing at all had happened. The road was gone. For one fragile moment, she almost believed she had imagined the entire night. Then her phone rang. The screen read, Zach. She answered with shaking hands. Nothing. No hello, no static, not even breathing. Just silence. The exact silence from mile 2, stretched out over the line until she almost said his name, just to break it. Then, quietly, I'm coming home. Click. She sat on the shoulder of the highway a long time after that, phone still pressed to her ear, listening to a dial tone and trying to decide whether what she'd heard had sounded like relief or like something reciting the correct answer to a question it had only just learned existed. Across town, the news was already interrupting itself. A man pronounced dead over a year earlier had returned, alive, with no explanation any doctor could offer. His own parents didn't understand it. Everyone remembered his funeral. His grave was still there. His obituary was still in the paper. And yet, he was standing in his kitchen, alive, waiting for his girlfriend to come home. Only Mia knew what it had actually cost. She told herself, driving home with her hands still shaking, that the cost was the only thing that mattered, and that whatever came through the door to meet her would simply be Zach. The way it had always been Zach, because that was what she'd asked for, and the road did not lie. She ran to him when she got there. She held him. For the first time in over a year, she smiled. A real one this time, no performance behind it, the kind that reaches the eyes. He held her back exactly the way he used to. He said the things he used to say in the voice he used to say them in, and got every single detail right, the way you'd get every detail right if you'd studied someone for a year rather than lived beside them for 3. He didn't blink for a long moment before she noticed, and he did, right on cue, like he'd remembered a beat too late that it was something people did. Mia didn't notice. She had stopped looking for anything to be wrong the moment his arms closed around her. Across the street, 2 figures stood completely still, watching, not smiling, not angry, just watching, the way you watch something you no longer have any part in. Zach's eyes drifted past Mia's shoulder, found them there in the dark, and he smiled. A small, private, knowing smile. Nothing like the one he'd just given her. Mia never turned around to see it. The story ends before she does. Hope you enjoyed another dark story from Dead Air. But before you disappear into the dark, we have a question for you. What's the strangest intrusive thought you've ever had? Maybe you stood at the edge of a cliff and wondered what would happen if you jumped. Maybe you held your phone over a balcony and imagined letting it slip. Maybe you were driving and had that split-second thought to turn the wheel. Or maybe you've had a thought so strange you've never told another person. Tell us your story down in the comments, because almost everyone experiences thoughts that seem to come from nowhere. Most disappear as quickly as they arrive, but every now and then, one lingers, and it makes you wonder where that thought came from and why it chose you. Who knows? Your experience might inspire a future tape here on VHS After Midnight. Until next time. Just because a thought enters your mind doesn't mean it belongs there.